The pseudo food scientists are at it again. There is yet another evil food ingredient that is out to get us, our grandmas, our apple pies, our country, all the things. So let's talk about lectins. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, we talk all things real whole grains, all from a biblical perspective. I teach you all about milling your wheat, consuming whole grains, and more. All right, so y'all have asked me this question before. What about lectins? And we're gonna be diving in and really talking about lectins in this video. So you may have heard many things about it, that they're bad for you, that we need to be avoiding them. Maybe you think that you should be on a low lectin diet, that they're out to get us, that people can get really sick from lectins. Well, there's just a lot going on with lectins. So in this video, here's what we're gonna be talking about. One is we're just gonna be talking about what are lectins, bare basic facts. Number two, the origins of this whole anti-lectin, low lectin diet fad that you may have heard about. Number three, we're then gonna be doing my favorite part, which is really diving in and really sorting through the misinformation and finding out what exactly is the truth. And number four, you know, we always end these with Felicia opinion. So I'll be giving y'all my overall opinion about this subject. Now, before we begin, like I've said before, I'm not a medical doctor. This is not to be taken as medical advice. If you have any health issues, of course, consult your medical doctor. And all of my sources will be linked in the description box below, so you can check everything out yourself. And trust me, there's a lot of them. I've listened to many podcasts, read many articles dealing with lectins. So basically I can break it down and make it easier for y'all to understand. First of all, what are lectins? You may have no idea. You may have landed on this video curious and have never heard the debate about lectins before. And bottom line, lectins are defined as proteins that bind to carbohydrates. It is a protein that is found in many foods, predominantly your grains, your beans, and even fruits and vegetables and nuts. I mean, it's found in many foods, and it's just the type of protein that tends to bind with carbohydrates. It is only found in plant food. Animal food does not have it, and the amount of lectins in the food just depends on the food. Some are higher than others. And a little hint, gluten is actually considered a lectin. All right, so number two, why do lectins have a bad rap? When did this happen? Is this a new phenomenon? What is the deal? And why do they consider lectins to be bad? So first of all, back in April 2017, as with how many of these fads start, a book was published in April 2017, The Plant Paradox was published by Dr. Stephen Gundry, who happens to be a cardiologist, a medical doctor. That is his field. And to sum up this book, he, of course, based a claim that lectins, which is a protein in common foods, are anti-nutrients and are behind many long-term chronic health conditions. Things like obesity, chronic inflammation, autoimmune diseases, and more. So this book is introduced that, hey, if you go on a low lectin diet or eliminate lectins completely, you will gain better health. You will restore your health, get better heart health, so on and so forth. And of course, like with many doctors, he tested it out with his patients and noticed, you know, that there was a difference in their health and that they did recover from things or just became healthier overall. They also state that basically what lectins are is found in plants, and that they are the defense mechanism that plants have, basically emitting a type of poison or toxin, since most plants do not have claws or venom or teeth, you know, that they can defend themselves like animals can, like mammals can. These plants have lectins as a defense mechanism, so animals and humans will not eat them. So yeah, those tomatoes and tomatillos, they're out to get y'all. So this is where I really want to focus on Dr. Gundry's website himself and just read to y'all what exactly he says. And according to his website, he does state, quote, "I believe lectins are the #1 greatest danger in the American diet." we'll hold off on that for Felicia opinion later. He also states that according to his research, that if you're overweight, if you get sick too often, if you have allergies or skin conditions or suffer with terrible indigestion, no matter what you eat, you're most likely dealing with intolerance to lectins. So according to Dr. Gundry, lectins are the evil of evils. They're causing all the problems that you may have in your health. Avoid them, they're bad. So there are 3 things that he attributes lectins to: is huge digestive damage, basically leaky gut. Well, that's number 2, is that they poke holes in your intestinal wall, which is leaky gut. And then also he states that lectins are directly linked to weight gain. So all of this sounds pretty terrifying. I have to admit. And, you know, and because of that, they label lectins as an anti-nutrient, that it binds to certain nutrients so your body cannot absorb them, like phytic acid. If you're very familiar with the phytic acid debate, pretty much the same arguments apply to phytic acid like they do to lectins, which I already did a video about phytic acids. You can check that out here. So I can see why this could scare a lot of people who maybe you are sick, you know, and you're legit trying to figure out what to do to heal your gut, to heal your body. And then you have a doctor come along who tells you, you know what, I have a solution: lectins. It's the bad guy. Avoid the bad guy. Lectins are the bad guy. Go on a low lectin diet and all of your problems will be solved. That's basically it in a nutshell. So now this leads to number 3. Let's now break this down and really unravel what is the truth about lectins. Because surprise, surprise, or really not surprise, there are many doctors out there, medical doctors, that completely disagree with Dr. Gundry. So that's why dietary recommendations in this country is so confusing, because the doctors themselves cannot agree. Let's unravel some truth about lectins. The biggest takeaway that I want you to remember from this video is that lectins are primarily broken down, if not eliminated almost entirely, when you cook the food. Ta-da! And as far as when it comes to grains and beans, which definitely have lectins, I'm pretty sure none of us out there are eating raw beans or raw grains. We're baking them. We're cooking them. That's the thing is, I actually have gotten this question on my Ezekiel bread recipes, because they see that now I've updated my recipe, but in the original recipe, I was milling kidney beans, you know, and I'm making kidney bean flour to add to my Ezekiel recipe. And people are like, oh no, what about lectins? Kidney beans are poisonous. I'm baking the bread. We're not eating raw kidney flour. That's going into something that is baked and it's being cooked pretty much till lectins are taken care of. So that's the biggest thing, is a huge amount of lectins are eliminated just cooking your food. And this is the same for vegetables, grains, beans, whatever it is. If you're really worried about lectins messing with you, or maybe you do have issues with them, you just cook your food well to an edible amount. So this leads to a second fact, is kidney beans get the worst rap when it comes to lectins. People say that kidney beans that are toxic, but that is only if they are just not cooked enough. And frankly, who likes kidney beans that aren't actually cooked? I mean, if you don't have cooked beans that they're not cooked all the way, it's kind of like a weird peanut, and you're probably not consuming your kidney beans anyway. They usually cite 2 incidences when it comes to showing how lectins make us sick. And that is one that took place, I believe, in England or Great Britain, where there was like a potluck at a hospital and someone brought chili made with kidney beans to the potluck, but the kidney beans were not cooked all the way, and a whole lot of people got sick. No one died. They just had your typical stomach bug issues. You know what those are. Just because the kidney beans were not cooked well enough. The second incident is some reason in Japan, it came out to consume raw white kidney bean flour, consume that raw, and well, that made people sick as well, because again, it's raw kidney beans, it wasn't cooked. So those tend to be the 2 sources that people cite showing how toxic lectins are, but it's eliminated if you just cook the beans. Ta-da! Another big takeaway is most studies that have been done about the effects of lectins, first of all, are usually done on mice or rats. We are not mice or rats. Our digestive systems are different than mice and rats. Humans were created differently. And then secondly, is they are completely isolating the lectins away from other nutrients that may be in the food and giving them like a much higher dosage of lectins, probably the amount that we would never see anyway. Most people do not consume a high lectin diet, especially in America with our standard American diet. So they were doing these studies isolating out one element of a food, testing just that without any regard to, what else might be in that food, and then also just at higher amounts. So not a really good study. Which leads to another point, the fact that most foods that contain lectins, like your whole grains, your beans, your vegetables, your nuts, they are such nutrient-dense foods that you are consuming so many good nutrients, things like fiber. With grains especially, you get your B vitamins, your vitamin E, all of these amazing, amazing nutrients that you need and are good for you. And again, the lectins are practically eliminated when you cook these foods or bake these foods. So they're completely missing the point that these foods are actually very healthy for you. And in essence, you don't really have to worry about the lectins. And whenever studies are done for those people who live in the blue zones, which if you're familiar with that, populations who live in blue zones are those zones in the world where they have very long lifespans. And most of these blue zones are actually consuming a higher lectin type diet because they're consuming whole grains and beans and nuts. And lectins actually can have health benefits. They can act as antioxidants. They protect human cells from damage caused by free radicals. And I think we get a lot of these type of lectins from our vegetables. You have raw tomatoes. Most of us can eat raw tomatoes like in a salad, things like that. We're not always cooking foods with lectins because, again, fruits and vegetables are totally fine eating raw most of the time. They can also slow digestion and prevent sharp rises in blood sugar. Again, I believe that when you're consuming it with other foods with that fiber in it, that's going to help your blood sugar and digestion. And especially in those blue zones, the whole grains and beans are associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and better health overall. Remember, with our whole grains and with our beans, we are getting rich B vitamins, fiber, minerals, so many things. Remember, grains have been the staple of life for thousands of years. I'm just saying. And according to Dr. Robert Eckel, who is a professor of medicine at the University of Colorado and a past president of the American Heart Association, he states that this is against every dietary recommendation represented by the American Cancer Society, American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association, and so on. So he states that the dietary recommendations that promote the elimination of foods that support lectins are actually not supported by any major health organizations. And I'm not always on board with these major health organizations, but there is something to be said to that statement. Okay, so now we get to my favorite part, Felicia opinion. My opinion. So the question has to be asked. So why did Dr. Gundry see his patients achieve better health by going on a low lectin diet if lectins are actually not that bad? And I think the answer is pretty much the same reason why Dr. Davis of Wheat Belly, who was also a cardiologist, saw improvement in his patients, along with Dr. Perlmutter, who wrote Grain Brain. And these are all anti-grain people. Why did they see an improvement in their patients? And I think the main reason is because whenever these people are going on a low lectin diet or some sort of diet like this, they're overall eliminating highly processed foods. And anytime you eliminate highly processed foods, that's a good thing, okay? That's a good thing. We all just need to be getting back to eating real food that God designed for us to be eating and eating it as close to the way as he created as possible. So even though I mill my own grains to bake bread, and that is slightly processed, I'm not consuming just the wheat berries, popping them in my mouth. I do slightly process them by milling them into flour, but I still am getting all of those beneficial whole grains the way that God designed for it to be. And it's very, very close to that wheat berry because everything in that wheat berry is now in that flour. I bake it and I consume it, and I achieve so many great health benefits from that. So just to recap again, the thing with the lectins especially is the fact that they're pretty much eliminated when you just cook your food. Make sure your beans are cooked, y'all. Okay, just cook your beans. Don't eat undercooked or raw beans. You're gonna be just fine. And same with your grains. You know, consume real whole grains, and we're baking them anyway. I don't know anyone who really just eats flour except cookie dough. You know, that may be the one exception. So, you know, just don't consume a lot of raw cookie dough. I'm just saying. That's probably a good idea. But stop being food scientist. Okay, there are so many things that we do not know about. But one thing I do know is that I serve an amazing God who created this world, who created me. I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and he created all of these amazing foods for my good, for me to enjoy, and for me to eat and be thankful and bless his holy name for the good that he's given us. And that's what I encourage y'all to do. Please do not allow things like this to scare you into thinking that foods that God told you are good to eat, that they're bad to eat. And even though you may have health issues, you may have some healing that you need to do. And maybe, you know, be making sure that you are consuming lower lectins if that is a problem for you. But again, most of that is fixed just by cooking it. So maybe lay off some raw fruits and vegetables. But overall, God has given you amazing health plan through his foods. And if you want to know more about why you should be milling your own grains, the importance of consuming real whole grains, then be sure to check out this video here. And as always, I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.